Hello and welcome to A Slice of Life Hour for some do-it-yourself motivation on 938 Live. I'm Eugene Lowe. Thank you very much for joining me today. And today we're talking about the power of me. You are special because of who you are, not what you do. And with my guest, he'll be discussing with me or sharing with me why it's important not to pigeonhole ourselves according to our jobs and define ourselves by, those things, our jobs, the way we look, the clothes we wear, things like that, and instead live passionately and yet profitably. Okay, we're not saying you don't need to make money. Yes, of course we all do. We need to make a comfortable amount, but we can do so passionately and joyfully as well. And Patrick Tan is my guest today, a trained lawyer turned pilot, but he doesn't let his qualifications or occupation define him. He's also an entrepreneur, author, passionate professional motivational speaker and trainer. Having already realized 2 childhood ambitions, he's now committed to helping individuals and organizations realize their aspirations. Hello Patrick, welcome to the show.
Hi Eugene, thanks for having me on board.
And I must say, just based on your short bio there, I really want your life. It sounds really ideal. I mean, you're doing something you're passionate about doing. You are a pilot. That is your...
That's the formal training. Yeah, that's right. Actually, when I was about 6, I had in mind 2 things that I'd be quite happy to do in this lifetime. And one of them was to be a lawyer, and then the other one was to be a pilot. And I'm only 32 this year, and I've tried both. And now I realize that it's important in the earlier part of your life to have a rough idea to know, what do you want to do? Because
when you're talking about earlier part, what sort of period or stage are you talking about?
A lot of decisions that we make very early on in our lives will actually affect us in a big way much further down the road.
Absolutely.
And one of the things which we've got to think about is that where do we want to end up? And I know it may sound a bit morbid, but how I started off was thinking, what would I want people to say about me at my eulogy? Now this may sound very a terribly morbid thing, but it really helps to put things in perspective, because that way it gives you an idea where are you going, what are the decisions and the things that you're going to do to get you to where you want to go.
Actually, Patrick, that doesn't sound morbid to me. It sounds like you made a quantum leap in terms of, really assessing yourself in your life, because a lot of people don't even think about that thing, but that is so crucial, right? What do you want to be remembered for? What is your legacy, sort of? And that sounds like a huge word to a lot of people, but it can be as simple as, say, raising well-adjusted, successful grandchildren, that sort of thing.
No, absolutely, Eugene. And I'm glad you brought that up, because when you look back on your life, when you are actually moving on to the next life or whatever you believe in, you wanted to know what you want to be remembered for. Do you want to be and for me, the most important thing was not so much I wanted to be remembered as a good lawyer or a great pilot, and I will make no comments about whether those 2 are true or not. But I wanted to be remembered as a good friend and a good son and a good father and a good husband and basically just somebody who would think that when they think about me, they'll think about, oh okay, he was this and this away, and it makes them feel warm. And to me, that was a legacy that I wanted to leave behind. So the things that I do for a living and a lot of the things that all the activities that I take part in on a pretty daily basis, they are not so much an ends in themselves, but a means to an end, sort of a trip, if you will, to get me to the ideal goal where I want to go.
And we're chatting today with Patrick Tan, who is a trained lawyer turned pilot. He is also an entrepreneur, author, and passionate professional motivational speaker and trainer. If you have a question or a thought to share with us, do give us a call. Join our conversation today on A Slice of Life Hour on 938 Live, 669-11938. And we are talking about finding a little bit more about Patrick as a person, his background, but we are talking about the power of being yourself, being unique and embracing that uniqueness instead of trying all the time to emulate standards or benchmarks that society has mapped out for you, and how that is the kind of lasting fulfillment that eventually we all want to find. And you were talking earlier, Patrick, about early on in life you kind of knew that those were the things that were important to you. And I've spoken to a lot of people who are in maybe similar positions, or but I think eventually they find that what really fulfills them and what gives their lives meaning is not their jobs, not the money, not status, not power, not fame, not whatever, but it always comes down to something much more personal and intimate, things like friendship and love and relationships and family. And I find that so universal, isn't it? I mean, people always look for happiness in all those other things, but they find that, what fulfills them is other things you talked about.
Absolutely. And I think if you go and ask any successful person who is perhaps, they've reached certain levels in their life of material wealth and status and power and what have you, and if you ask them, like, do they they have any regrets, oftentimes what they do tell you is that, oh, perhaps I regretted not really getting to know my children. Perhaps I did not spend enough time getting to know my parents or the people, or spending time with my friends. Now, one of the things which I learned from Stephen R. Covey, who's I'm sure lots of people know, he's an inspirational author and that sort of person. One of the 7 habits of highly effective people is that you must always start with the end in mind. And that's the thing that a lot of people lose focus. They become so focused on and being driven by let's get a better job because I want more money. But money doesn't solve the problem. The problem is not money. The problem is, what is it that makes you passionate? Because if you live your life with passion and you do something that you are truly passionate about, you don't have to worry about the material, because the material will follow you on its own. For instance, let's take an example of somebody who says that they are genuinely interested in cars. They're very passionate about cars, but if you ask them how an engine works, or an internal combustion engine, how does that run, and they tell you, no, I don't know, but I like particular brands of cars, then I'd say to you that that person isn't genuinely passionate about cars, because somebody who is genuinely passionate, genuinely driven, would do anything that's necessary to make sure that his passion and his dreams are fulfilled.
Okay, so that's what distinguishes somebody who is really passionate about something as opposed to somebody who's just casually interested in it. That person would have to almost live and breathe that particular thing, isn't it?
Exactly. And the thing I've noticed from all the very highly successful people which I interact with quite regularly, and they share with me that for them there is no distinction between work and play. A lot of us think of work as basically, oh, we go to a job. Well, 9 to 5 is pretty optimistic these days, but that 9 to 5, this is where I work, and after that, anything outside of that is play. But if you have your job or your work or whatever it is that you do as play, there is no distinction. You don't feel the sense of dread every morning when you go to work, because it's not work, it's play. It's something that, oh, I'm excited. I wake up today and I'm really excited to be there.
Exactly. They're not mutually exclusive.
Absolutely.
Yeah? Okay. We're chatting today with Patrick Tan, who is a trained lawyer turned pilot. He's also an entrepreneur, author, and professional trainer and speaker. If you have a question for Patrick, do call us 669-11938. Yen, we do have you holding on, and we'd like to ask you a favor to hold on just a bit more. We're going to go for a break and come back with your question for Patrick. I'm Eugene Low. You're listening to A Slice of Life R on 938 Live. Thank you very much for joining me, Eugene Low, on 938 Live's A Slice of Life R. This is DIY motivation every weekday. And my guest today is Patrick Tan, who is a trained lawyer turned pilot, an entrepreneur, author, and professional motivational speaker and trainer as well. We're talking about the power of need today, why it's important not to pigeonhole ourselves according to our jobs and instead live passionately yet profitably. 669-11938 is our number. If you have something to share with us or you want to join the conversation, please do call. We've got Yen holding on. Thanks for being so patient, Yen.
Thank you, thank you, Eugene. And Patrick, congratulations for fulfilling your dreams and doing what you want to do.
Thank you.
My question is really about the Generation Y. With all this information and encouragement for them to fulfill their dreams, I see an over-eagerness for Generation Y to kind of try to fulfill dreams without consideration, in some cases, that the elderly parents may need financial support, or even the spouse and all may need the financial support while they fulfill the dream. So in the name of fulfilling the dreams, they may do things way too early before they're able to provide some of this financial foundation, or even fulfill some of the financial obligation like borrowing for the studies and so on. So that's one question. How do they balance that about fulfilling their dream and other obligations that they have?
Okay, before we answer your question, Yen, could you just define for us what you mean by Generation Y? Give us an example, maybe age-wise or job-wise.
I would think they are between 20 to about 30, early 30s. They are the Generation Y people.
Okay. Yes, Patrick, would you like to address Yen's question?
Yeah, sure, Yen. Thanks for calling and thanks for your question. Well, I totally understand where you're coming from, because there are economic realities, and then of course you have your dreams. And a lot of people like to suggest to us that you don't need to go to the university to be successful. And they point out certain figures like Mark Zuckerberg and you have your Bill Gates, people who didn't finish college. But I think what a lot of people fail to realize also is that these people went into college, which means that they were capable of going to college. They were not university educated, at least qualified for university education, and from there they found an opportunity which was just exponentially greater than anything that they could have had achieved had they completed school. Now, I would give those inspirational stories as stories where, yes, school is important, but when something even bigger comes along, it requires that leap of faith to go out and get it. And as for your question is, how does somebody live their dreams passionately and at the same time still fulfill obligations? Responsibility is, to me, it's undebatable. If you have obligations, you have responsibilities, you have to fulfill them. Now, the question is then, what do you do outside of that? If somebody says that they have their dreams and that they are passionate people, to me, for instance, let's say if I'll use the example of a car in a garage, for instance, because we've been talking about cars earlier. And if I said to you that I was very passionate about cars and perhaps opening my own garage at some point in time, and what would I do on my free time? Do I go out and have fun with my friends, or do I spend my time, reading books about mechanics, auto mechanics, and spending time tinkering on my car? So it's not to say that if you have a dream, you have to give up your obligations or responsibilities. You can do both. The question is, what do you do with your free time? And everybody has it. And if you say you have a dream, then you use your free time to pursue that dream.
Okay, thank you, Patrick, and thank you very much for the question, Yen. We don't have that much time left. We have to go for news very soon, but thank you so much, and do call us later if you have more to share with us. 669-11938 is our number. I think it's not so much that we don't feel the obligation towards our family or what have you, or traditional values. I think it's just a different kind of culture or different kind of zeitgeist at this time, that we are living in. The young people feel that they should first fulfill themselves before fulfilling other people, and I truly believe that as well. I mean, the generation of my parents and the parents before them, it was a generation of sacrifice.
Yes.
Right? They always thought about family first, country first, nation first before self, and that was the kind of mentality they had, and it worked well at that time. But that also led to a lot of self-doubt, a lot of unhappiness, pain, suffering, and a lot of misery that they kept to themselves, and that did not necessarily make them eventually joyful or fulfilled. But these days, I think young people are more informed. They realize that to see the bigger picture, and if you love and accept yourself, embrace yourself, follow your passions first, and if you're happy, then you'll be better able to make other people happy.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. It doesn't mean that if you have a dream, it doesn't mean you can't be responsible, and it doesn't necessarily mean that, especially when the older generation is dealing perhaps with the generation Y, their concern is that whilst they pursue that dream, people from a different sort of era, without the internet and that kind of thing and social media, they might not be able to see that this dream will, eventually become something. And for them, they will know what you're doing looks very risky, very dangerous.
And I really like your question, Yen, and I'm so tempted to go on and on and on with Patrick talking about that and going into details and give examples, but unfortunately we don't have the luxury of time here. But I will try to get into it a bit more later on. You're listening to A Slice of Life Hour on 938 Live. I'm Eugene Loh, and in about 15 minutes we'll continue our chat with Patrick Tan, a trained lawyer turned pilot and author, entrepreneur, passionate professional, motivational speaker and trainer as well. Do join us later for more here on 938 Live.